Hello, I'm Gary, Librarian and Archivist at BALTIC, and we're going to look today at the exhibition BALTIC Then and Now, which looks at the last 16 years of BALTIC's history as an organisation. BALTIC Archive is a huge collection of videos and films, starting from this one in 1999 through to ones that we're still making today. And here we have on this screen a representation of some of our favourites from that period. Okay, so moving into room 2 of the exhibition, we start to look at the really early days when the Baltic was just an idea. So the first thing we see when we come into this exhibition and look at this vitrine is this architectural brief from 1993. And one of the interesting things about this isn't a photocopy or a section of the brief, it's the actual brief itself. So it was as short as this, just an A4 sheet. And the architect who won the competition, Dominic Williams, told me that he was really surprised at the size of this, because usually the architectural briefs that he's worked with after this event were at least 100 pages long, 200 pages long sometimes, but this building, this magnificent, huge building, had a brief of just 1 page. One of the things I've tried to do with this display is really show some of the changes that happen from those initial stages of the architecture through to the final building. And one of the images that shows this most clearly, I think, is this one here. A drawing made in 1994, before Baltic had any money. This was before the Arts Council proposal had even been written. And the architect was asked to design something very flexible. So we have here a building with just 1 floor for arts. And the idea was that if and when the money arrived from the Arts Council, he would add floors at a later stage. Quite how that would work architecturally, I've no idea, but this was the plan that showed his original ideas. So this is the poster wall, and this represents some of the exhibitions that we've had over the past 16 years. And it's interesting that we've had 222 exhibitions in that period. So quite a significant number. Here is a smallish selection of 67 posters to represent that. For me, one of the things that stands out, even though you can see the changes in design as we go through the years, is this huge Baltic font that you see in every single poster, along with the Baltic logo. And this is a really important feature of BALTIC Centre for Contemporary Art. The iconography of Baltic is really important and was a really early introduction into the organisation. So here we have a series of newsletters that were produced before we opened. They ran from 1998 through to 2002. So we've got this bold number 1 at the bottom, but if you turn it over, even more striking is this Baltic logo. It's not just hidden somewhere on the page, it's a really major part of the design of this newsletter. So this was really just promoting the future art gallery that would arrive 4 years later. Another exhibition that did that rather well was Taratantara by Anish Kapoor. And this was in 1999. The first ever exhibition within the walls of Baltic. But if you remember, I said we didn't open until 2002, so how was that possible? Well, what we did, once the architect had supported the walls with this massive scaffolding type frame, instead of getting on immediately with the work, we decided to have this exhibition by the artist Anish Kapoor. And it was this huge red sculptural piece that fitted within the building. So I've already mentioned the Baltic logo and the Baltic font, but where did that all begin? For this, we have to go all the way back to this little fella here, which is just an old wooden block, a wooden typeface block that was found along with many others in the original flour mill. And what happened with this is 2 designers, Henrik and Gregor, got hold of a number of these and took them to a meeting in order to influence the style of the architecture. One of the important features of Baltic as an organisation is the way it tried to represent its own history. Most obviously, that's the reuse of the building itself and retaining the outside walls, but we also used some of these smaller ideas in order to recreate that industrial feel. So one of the elements that the designers of the font took is the dents and chips that were part of the history of those blocks. If we look closely at the B here, for example, we see a chip out in the corner. And this was deliberately trying to reference that historical industrial feel of the original flour mill. So I think one of the things that this exhibition shows is that Baltic didn't arrive in a timid fashion. Even before the galleries opened, the name was out there in very big, bold type. And the final object that I'm going to look at today is something we call the Joseph, named after Joseph Rank, who was responsible for building the original flour mill. So it's this rather heavy cast iron model of Baltic. It has the big Baltic stamp on the bottom. And there were 50 of these made. And it was Baltic's equivalent of the Oscar. So every artist that exhibited here was given one of these in recognition. Baltic Archive is a complete collection of an organisation of BALTIC Centre for Contemporary Art. So whether you want to find out more about the architecture or the exhibitions through the posters or some of the publications that we produced or the many, many videos that we've made throughout the years, you can find it all at this exhibition, BALTIC Then and Now, which runs until the 4th of January 2019.